So now, before we begin, I have just observed one thing that one consistent shift we are seeing across global enterprises is that GCCs are no longer measured only on scale or efficiency. They are increasingly being evaluated on capability depth, ownership, and their role in enterprise innovation. As AI and deep tech capabilities mature, the question for many organizations is no longer where GCCs sit, but what problems they are trusted to solve. Just an observation. We now move on into a deep dive panel discussion on how innovation and AI are powering the next evolution of GCCs. For this, I would like to invite our first panelist, who is Mr. Shirish Tatikonda, Chief Digital and Data Officer at Lloyds Technology Center, India. I'm just waiting for the applause for him. Thank you. Next we have is Mr. Kiran Pisapati, who is the Head of Finance Transformation, COE, HSBC. Our next panelist is Mr. Kedar Kasture, who heads the Corporate Center India and SVP at Franklin Templeton. Our next panelist is Ms. Shilpa Sree Nayak, who is the Director for Technology Strategy and Innovation at Amgen, India. And of course, our moderator for this session is Mr. Gaurav Vasu, founder and CEO of UnearthInsight. Mr. Vasu, over to you.
Hi. Thank you everyone. So the theme of the panel is predominantly around digital innovation and how you see GCC leaders here. So I think for diversification, the idea is to share with you how do we see integration of AI into the innovation programs and how technology, engineering and transformation functions in GCCs have transformed beyond POCs and innovation, pockets of innovation to large impact that they are creating. And we would love to also have some time for questions, but idea is for you to listen in and understand how these GCC leaders are creating global impact. So probably I'll start with the first question to all of you, right? And probably Kiran will start with you and then Kedar, is to understand how you are integrating AI into your innovation programs and strategies as you go into 2026. The theme on the board today is how do you create vertical and functional impact and own product ownership end-to-end from whether it's an India GCC or some other location, and how do you build relatability, right? So how do you then contextualize and integrate AI into your programs? Kiran, probably your role and as transformation officer for finance function at HSBC.
Sure. Firstly, it's a pleasure to be here. And timing-wise, I think it's quite topical, having had Davos last week, right, where it almost seemed like it wasn't a World Economic Forum, it seemed like World AI Forum, right? The discussion, AI was center stage, innovation was center stage. So I mean, thanks to NASSCOM and UnearthInsight for organizing this. It's quite topical. So a wee bit about HSBC and a context for the audience here. HSBC celebrated its 25th year for its presence in GCCs in India last year. And as a bank, we've been here for about 100 plus years. But as a GCC, we just celebrated 25th year milestone last year. And interestingly, 25% of our workforce is in India, right, globally, across the organization. I mean, I talk about workforce, gone are those days of scale. Now it's about deep SME expertise, right from our first line, our risk owners, process owners, business owners, outcome owners, to our second line, risk stewards, and then finally our third line, our audit functions as well. Everybody is here. So in essence, it's a microcosm or the wider macrocosm. So coming to transformation, which is my own home territory, right? Any large-scale transformation would be incomplete without the presence of India. So India has essentially now become the brain trust for HSBC, right? Given the presence that we have here. Any new idea, It's become the playbook of sorts, where any new idea gets experimented first in India and then taken to the wider markets, right? I can take a couple of examples of innovation. Innovation now is a buzzword. It's no longer a buzzword. It's part of the DNA, right? It's well embedded into transformation. So just a couple of interesting stats since you talked about AI. We in HSBC believe in responsible AI, right? So from 24, and AI has been a tryst that with AI that we've been on the journey for about 10 years now. One of our first use cases was around dynamic transaction risk management. So this is something we did with Google as a partnership. Just to give you a bit of scale and color, the financial crime and banking is not immune to that. So the amount of false positives that we used to get back in the day before this innovation that we did, co-partnered with Google, now with deep tech involvement, we've been able to reduce our false positives to the tune of about 60%. So that is capacity that we have created, that we have given back to the businesses that been able to harness that back. So I'm just giving you a couple of snippets, but the scale of AI and innovation in general, we have actively at this moment about 600 different initiatives that are in production in our BAU operations. So that's the scale. So we are out of that POC pilot mindset. Now this is active production that I'm talking about across the scope, across the globe, across our 52 markets that we operate in. And India is kind of the epicenter for all of this in terms of innovation. We have a lot of deep, and to the point that I was making, being the microcosm, we have our technology partners. We have our businesses here, our second line and third line here. So no better place than to innovate from India for the group. And I'll give you one more example. In terms of, one of my previous roles just about 6 months back, we were leading, I was personally leading the modernization of our payments business across 58 markets, right? And that was a once in a generation change that we're going through. And that was completely led out of India. So we're not just talking about technology or operations, we're talking about product management, the core product management, understanding the P&L, having deep SME expertise. And without that, you really can't usher in change. So that is the scale at which we are operating in India, right? And innovation, like I said, is the embedded well into, we operate change in the form of value streams, and it's well embedded into our value streams. Yeah.
Thanks, Kiran. Kedar, from your perspective, right? So if I look at from a investment or financial or from all the functions that you impact, how do you see AI getting integrated deeply and impacting?
Absolutely. So firstly, I'm glad this is not called the AI conference. This is the Digital Innovation Conclave, right? AI is obviously integral to that, but AI seems to be dominating all the conversations. I'll talk a little bit about, firstly, Franklin Templeton and the GCC that we have, right? So many of us might be familiar with Franklin Templeton funds in India. We have an India-based business, roughly about 12 billion in terms of assets under management. But essentially, we're a 1.6 trillion global asset manager. We essentially manage money on behalf of our clients. So it's, think of sovereign government institutions, large institutions, high net worth investors like many of us in the audience here. We basically manage money. That's our business. We've been in India as a GCC, and we oftentimes don't refer to us as a GCC, but just another global office location for close to 25 years, right? So similar to HSBC's story, we've been sort of early in the India game. And we have a GCC setup that essentially comprises all functions that we have globally. So a microcosm of the global firm. We have investment management professionals, we have investment risk, operations, technology, HR shared services, you name it, as a global function, and we have it in India. And so then to come to the point of innovation, AI, and the GCC, to me it's an inflection point, and I reflect back on our 25 plus year journey. The GCC is no longer a change enabler, it's a change driver, it's a change co-creator, and it is a source of strategic talent for the firm. And a couple of examples I'll mention. So I talked about us being an investment manager. Oftentimes our portfolio managers look at sectors, countries, stocks, instruments that we want to invest in. And one clear opportunity for us is in terms of how do we embed AI, data science, in terms of this decisioning process itself. So clearly we have a lot of information at our disposal, information from companies, sectors, economic indicators, And what we've been really trying to do, where the India angle also comes in, is we've invested in creating a team of PhDs, data scientists, people who are deep tech AI, in terms of creating what we call as an alternate persona of a portfolio manager. So think of a portfolio manager who on your behalf is looking to invest money and trying to choose sectors and stocks. And oftentimes these portfolio managers don't share this beyond this room, but have their own biases and their own ways or their own preferences. And so for us, it's a bit like, how can you work through those? And how can you leverage data and insights through that data to be able to correct or to be able to address some of the inherent biases that a portfolio manager could have? And so we've created an alternate persona that actually is like a virtual portfolio manager that sits in a room with other portfolio managers, trying to remind them, trying to provide insights in terms of things that have worked, not worked. Sales and distribution, so great that we have the products that we produce, but ultimately from a sales and distribution perspective, we've invested in terms of how do you engage with institutional investors? How can you have insights in terms of what have been their investing styles and preferences? What asset managers have they historically engaged with? But more importantly, also deal with then insights about what might be the outperforming trends or the funds that we have that could relate to the kind of preferences that an institutional manager could have. So we're embedding sort of AI as part of that fairly deeply. And a large part of this AI development, coming to the GCC question, Gaurav, that you had, is being driven from India. We have a global partnership with Microsoft for the sales and distribution platform for asset managers. And a large part of that team is sitting in India. And the last example I'll mention is operations, right? So I think fair to say that all of us believe, or I'd like to believe that we believe, that operations is an area that is significantly disrupted by AI, data science, intelligent automation. And we have obviously seen the power of people sitting next to each other in a GCC. So between technology and operations, people that sit next to each other and are able to innovate, come up with ideas. We're taking that a step forward because now we have global leaders. So I run investment operations for the global firm. And my counterpart, who is a global CIO, direct report, runs intelligent automation for the global firm as well. So in addition to the organic bottom-up innovation that we can come up with, there's a significant amount of opportunity in terms of driving top-down innovation, being able to think in terms of how you prioritize change and how do you drive that from a GCC perspective. So I will essentially say that it's a huge opportunity for a firm like ours to leverage India in terms of a significant source of talent, but also in terms of actually driving innovation for our global firm.
Thanks, Kedar. Now that's interesting to see how 25 plus years in both banking, financial services industry is integrating AI, part of the innovation program across the core business functions, like you said, which is your day in and day out, you're managing people's money and you're integrating AI on that. And gone are the days where you just integrate AI for your enabling functions, right? So it's a business impact that you're creating and the work that you guys do as product owners from India. No longer it's the integration of AI on the cost side, but it's actually impacting business metric, right? Portfolio returns, and those are some of the business metrics that you would be measuring. But now moving to understanding from a farmer perspective, right? We have seen a phenomenal ecosystem in Telangana. We see Genome City doing some great work. We heard this from Jayesh Ranjan, and we've seen the Indian and the global pharma ecosystem coexisting phenomenally in the Genome City ecosystem. Would love to hear, Shilpa, from your perspective as a technology leader at Amgen. While you have a late mover advantage, but in the last 2 years, I've seen the kind of impact some of you have created in embedding. So would love to hear your thought on how across the clinical and the pharma life cycle, how you are integrating AI, and maybe some examples if you could share with us.
Thank you, Gaurav, for the question. Happy to be speaking here today at NASSCOM event. So my name is Shilpa. I work for Amgen India. So I think we had an advantage of being the late entrants into this market, right? The GCC space. So AI is not an innovation lab topic. It's more of, a way of working for us. So whether it is HR, procurement, any of those support functions, or the core functions, as you rightly mentioned, whether it is research and development of drugs, or if it is commercialization of drugs, AI is native to how we work. Every single employee at Amgen has access to an NLM organization license. So we make easier for employees to adapt to the new ways of working. Just similar to your MS Office suite, right? So in early 2000, this was something that, it took a lot of effort for people to use Excel or, a database, because this is not a typical, way of working which existed probably like 20, 25 years ago. So AI is the same, but thanks to the kind of talent that we have in this, in the country and in this specific city, people are very adaptable to new technology. So there is no, bias to adopting new technology, whether it's for productivity or if it's for innovation. And like I said, like one of my panelists quoted, innovation is not a buzzword anymore, it's a way of life. So same with us for AI. So we use AI as a native way of working across the functions.
Thanks. Maybe one other additional point of view, right? If you could share, given that, you, unlike the banking, financial services and the other GCC ecosystem, interestingly, life sciences and pharma GCCs also engage or hire doctors and pharmacovigilance, and you wouldn't think of, them coming as native AI learners. That's a conversation. Yeah, that's a conversation I had with, some of your technology leaders. Yes. Would love to hear, what you're seeing since you started 2 years back and you've scaled much faster. If you could share your thoughts on how you're seeing not just the native AI talent coming in from campuses, colleges, but how, doctors across Bangalore, Hyderabad who are joining you are actually native AI learners, right? So
they are more tech adaptable, to be honest, because I think they see the power of technology, the way it can transform some of their core ways of working, right? So like I said, whether it is authoring certain documents or making their lives easy when it is to comply with regulatory needs, they are just more proficient with AI than the technology partners. For us, who's coming from a non-pharma background, pharma is a new topic, right? It's a new domain. But for people in pharma to adopt to technology, I don't think it's difficult. I think they have adopted it very, very well, better than the technologists, I would say. And I think, like I said, it's become a way of working today. So every ChatGPT license that we use, for instance, is definitely to see how we can unearth more of those insights that could be more human bias than machine bias today, right? Yeah. So machine bias, we're learning to take care of, how to manage those model bias, but human bias is something which is much more complex, I would say.
True.
So I think people are very, very, very well adaptable to, using some of this new technology. And being in this industry for the last 10 years, we have seen multiple technologies that we experimented with, right? So artificial intelligence, blockchain. One technology which has really taken off is artificial intelligence today, and which is why we are here to, speak about it as a topic. And this is something which has become a core component of technology itself. So I don't think any platform today exists which is not AI native. So I don't recall any product that we have recently used which is not AI native. It is, everything comes with its own set of intelligence. So predictive analysis, sentiment analysis, it is also relationship management. Causal AI is something that we are, very keen on exploring how it will turn out to be. So I think every bit of this, new ways of AI integration is possible. And I think people who are coming from traditional industries are much more adaptable than technologists, I would say.
No, absolutely. In fact, Shilpa, I was amazed to hear about the LLMs where doctors are joining Amgen and trying to understand chemical compositions of drugs, not just on a public but a private LLM built on the back of internal data that you have crunched, and how, like you said, they're the first ones to adopt and understand how they can impact on the business metric, right? Now, probably, Shirish, you also have a sort of a late mover advantage, been in India as a GCC for the last 2 years, scaled tremendously, and the Hyderabad ecosystem has seen that, right? From a personal finance perspective and from a Lloyds overall initiative perspective, how have you integrated and adopted part of the innovation program, some of the existing innovation programs that you have?
Yeah. First of all, thank you. Glad to be here. It's a great event, and this is my first time in a NASCOM event, so very excited to be here. Unlike HSBC finished 25 years, so we recently completed 2 years in the industry in Hyderabad here. And being a late mover into the market, it's very important to set the right tone as well, right? Because unlike we don't want to be seen as a satellite office or an offshore center, but you want to be seen as a a stakeholder in a global strategy, and this is where that strategy gets industrialized. And innovation and all of that obviously becomes a key ingredient of it. In the context of overall, like I think they talked about some of the vertical examples, right? And I can give a sense from a cross-cutting or a horizontal setting. Like one of the first thing, for instance, is how do we build agents or AI-powered systems that are consumer-facing with the tone that that your bank wants to be seen with, right? Like very recently, we announced UK's first personal financial assistant. It's going to come out live to end users very soon. Our CEO, Charlie, also talked about it. And in our so every year, Lloyds does consumer digital index, essentially to see how the trends are moving in the industry. And one of the data point from that is 1 out of 3 adults in UK interact with AI every week for some sort of financial advice and assistance to make their financial decisions. And obviously, they resort to tools like ChatGPT, Gemini, and whatnot, right? And these are general purpose tools without any context to your personal world. But on the other hand, the personal assistant or financial assistant that we roll out will be a lot more context aware. You know exactly where the client is spending, and they can chat with the spend, and they can make these hyper-personalized nudges to your financial decisions. So you bring that financial decision with a lot more trust and safety, but also at very, very faster pace. And also Lloyds being, for people who do not know, Lloyds is one of the oldest companies in the entire world. So you can imagine the tech debt that we would have accumulated over decades and decades, right? So one of the area there where we are seeing AI to play a big role is also tech simplification. How do we reduce the complexity in our ways of doing internally, whether it is data-oriented products or insights-oriented products? How do we take from dozens of softwares and solutions that are there in the system to handful of softwares and technologies that people use internally every day? So that's another big focus. And I think in the previous panel also, people talked about responsible AI, right? I think that's a very, very big focus for us, how we deploy and build these AI systems more safely, securely, with responsible. Like I think Ranjan sir mentioned, the mistake that you make in the financial industry is not like a bad user experience, but it's a regulatory failure, right? And with huge reputational damage. So how we do that with safety and trust is very, very important. So we turn like ethical principles into machine executable guardrails. And in fact, I'm super proud to say that our responsible AI program at Lloyds was recognized as the best responsible AI program by Data IQ a couple of months ago. So it's kind of fundamentally changing the way we do the innovation. We want to innovate faster, but in a responsible manner, with founded in our culture of inclusivity and people first, right? I think that's another big one.
Thanks. No, I think clearly from what I hear from all four of you is it's deeply integrated, cutting across horizontal functions. And like you said, right, it's no longer just an independent function. It's just like Microsoft technology that all of us use an Outlook, all of us use a Teams. It's embedded into all of your day-to-day functions. And interestingly, what you mentioned, right, that now I think they're beyond POCs. You're deploying it for, given your business is more B2B2C eventually, right? People like you and me who can access this as a personal assistant, that's an impact. You're creating a huge transformation story and 600 plus use cases that you talked about. But you mentioned an interesting piece, right? So I'll try to add in two perspectives and want to hear from you. Is You talked about the technology debt that all of us carry as large, or all of the clients that we also work with, and services plus, the global enterprises and GCCs carry. Uh, Data indicates that, a large bank, insurer, pharmaceutical, or any of the, 40, 50-year-old enterprise together has close to about 200-300 applications, right, that they manage, integrate. You and I have discussions on the patchworks that some of the services providers come and enabled, right? How do you see that and the capability gap that you sort of try to plug, right? As a GCC, you guys take a lot of lead, and you talked about it, right? How do you take and change that? Because we've all, as enterprises, had carried those, we have multiple ERPs for different business units. How do you think that's changing, and how is GCC playing a role? And if you could also add in, what more capabilities are you actually integrating to actually make that tech debt into more of, tech ROI and tech impact that you can create?
Absolutely, brilliant question, and I hope I'm not going to be quoted outside this. This is a Chatham House rules should apply. So I think you're right. I mean, HSBC has been around for 160 years. So with that, obviously, we've seen generationals of change, right? So to your point, and this is a publicly quoted figure, we have about 7,500 systems, production tier 0 systems. So that's the scale, because we used to operate in 100 plus markets. And through acquisitions, organically and otherwise, there's a massive technology estate. So what we have done over the years is we've consciously invested in simplifying our estate. I drive the simplification agenda for our function. So we are reducing year on year. We managed to reduce about 20% of that applications over the last 18 months. So there's conscious effort to simplify the estate. So that's one. And to your point about where GCCs play a significant role, bulk of our technology partners, our technology teams are here in India, most of them. Right? Hyderabad, Pune happens to be our core base. And the way we've gone about, not just with AI, but general innovation, is tech skills, and I think Shilpa mentioned that. Tech skills, in our view, is table stakes. Whether you're a frontline manager working with customers, retail or corporate, or you are somebody in the corporate office, tech skills are table stakes. So one thing we have done consciously about 2 years ago is we rolled out a program called AI Ambassador, right? And those were basic skills that everybody in the bank, all 200,000 employees of the bank needed to, it was a mandatory training that we did. And of course, there are levels of proficiency within that. So that way, we have achieved AI literacy across the bank. That meant not just the power of AI, equally the risk side of AI, being responsible, right? Taking ownership of the transparency, the accountability. So you're not just accountable to the regulators, but to your customers, right? So that learning needed a cultural shift, cultural mindset shift that we needed to bring in. So that was essentially how we drew the fundamental bedrock was laid. And then the simplification agenda meant where can we standardize, where can we streamline, and they may not be a bank as complex as ours. There can never be one version of a product because there are market nuances, regulatory nuances, and our customer segments are, and we are a universal bank, right from retail banking to investment banking. But that said, wherever there's an opportunity of simplification, GCCs have played a significant role in driving that simplification. And it's not done, it's a continuous journey, right? Like I said, we have reduced about 20% of our estate. And this is a multi-year journey that we are on. So we're talking not just about technology, we're talking about foundational cultural shift, a mindset shift, and then empowering and ensuring that the GCCs, and we don't know, by the way, we don't refer to it as GCC internally anymore. Right? With 25% of our workforce here, it is as good as our London office. Outside our London office, I think the largest base is here. So we don't refer to it as GCC. It's about right talent for the right job, for the right role. Right? And the number of global roles that we have working out of India, I mean, the NASSCOM stat says that we are about 6,500 global roles. And there's a lion's share of that from HSBC as well. Where we have global roles who are business outcome leads, or product leads, who are P&L leads working out of India. Right? So that's the way we've gone about it.
No, great. And actually for audience sitting in the room, right, a lot of them startups, a lot of them services players who are trying to innovate and come to you. I think it's a great point for them to understand that there's a lot more functional integrated into the AI skills that you look at, right? Especially from Kedar, your perspective, and if I look at some of your peer GCCs and their centers across the globe, I think one of the need in your space is also more functional, and AI is anyways a given as a skill, right? So how do you look at that, right? And the tech debt, if you could probably talk about that in the last 2.5 decades, right? How have you created how have you helped shrink, like we heard about 25% of the tech debt been shrink, right? So
Yeah, I think firstly resonate quite a lot with the HSBC story, right? We've had our own sort of share of legacy applications over a period of time. And, we've been focused in terms of looking at sort of embedding innovation as part of what we do. So clearly tech debt and addressing the application infrastructure is a key priority for us. We're implementing an enterprise-wide system, which again, for which a large number of the owners, whether on the technology side of things or on the business side of things, happen to be based out of India. So we're again a contributor to the 6,000 odd roles that was referenced, right, around the NASSCOM number of global functional roles. And I would say that what we've been trying to do really is in terms of embedding, it's one thing to look at things like whether it's innovation ideas, an ideation program, or having hackathons, or essentially equipping people with skills. Those are givens in some sense, and I'd like to believe that most of us in this room here, do that as a matter of regular practice. What we've been focused on is sort of, the enabling framework or the critical success factor that makes it happen, which for us is essentially about culture, context, and empowerment. And I'll quickly talk about that. So culture for us is, we're a 75-plus-year-old company. We were founded in the year 1947, easy to remember, right, as a firm. And so as a firm, you can oftentimes rest on your successes over the years. How do you really have a mindset of challenging yourself? So I mentioned this in the context of we were a pioneer in the global investing. Back in the day when US investors used to invest only in the US, we were the first US asset manager to start global investing. We were the first in India to start SIPs, which now is sort of part of common parlance, right? The systematic investment plan. Where I was going with that is it's very integral to our culture in terms of saying we carry a long legacy and a history, but we need to be as nimble as a startup in the way that we think and the way that we operate. So how do you drive that thought process day in, day out? That is foundational from a cultural perspective and something, our CEO sort of drives from the top. As we speak, she sponsored a Shark Tank competition, that has a number of entrants from India that are providing ideas that would be business impacting, and global is business impacting, right? So there's culture, there's context, which is, we're out of time. I'm going to try to speak fast, right? So there's context, right, which is it's great to know technology or AI, but it's equally critical to know the context of the business that you're working in. So how do you get technology folks to understand more of the business and business folks to understand more of technology? Because it's really intertwined. And the last thing I would say is empowerment, which is the point I mentioned. It's very important to have leaders. Many of these leaders are now based in India, running global functions that can empower their teams to be able to drive change.
no, absolutely. And, since we are on top of the hour, so Shilpa, and from your perspective, Shirish, right, especially in your context, I think I'm really passionate about the industry that you operate in, given that it's a huge impact that it creates on all of us in the room, and the kind of products and drugs that you manufacture has a direct impact on us and our family and genetics, right? And very important to understand, from your perspective, apart from the tech debt, one of the things that I'm seeing you guys are doing and some of your other peers are doing in the country is also building relatability. And how do you enable technology? You lead the technology function, but how do you build relatability of somebody's a doctor sitting in India trying to, identify chemical compositions for the West, right? For the markets where they don't understand, they only go by the data, and a lot of work that you do in that space with partners. So probably if you could touch a little upon that before we then.
Sure. So I think for us, like I said, again, it's more adaptable for people who are coming from a non-tech background. It is just about empowering, and as he rightly mentioned, it's also how you can bring a top-down leadership strategy around, adapting new technology, right? So I was just recently reading an article. Most of the AI adoption fails because of culture rather than the technology itself. So how do you make sure that the top-down culture is AI-friendly, right? And we have been lucky. Most of the leaders in our organization are very, very pro-AI. In fact, it's one of the lead mandates that we sort of swear by, and which is why we are an AI native organization here as well. And you enable people. That's one of the main aspects of it. So give them access to applications, make them more comfortable. And the moment you let people know that this is not going to be measured as an efficiency or a productivity impact, or there's not going to be a change for you, people are more open to trying a new technology or adapting a new technology, right? So it's, again, I would like to say it's the cultural aspects of how an organization integrates new technology within its business.
No, absolutely. And what I hear from Naveen and some of your other leaders as well, right? There's a bit of a direct emotional quotient as well in the culture, because what you're building and producing has a direct impact, right? And here, given his GCC expertise for the last few years with the previous...
It's more tangible.
Yeah, absolutely.
Compared to any other business. So every change that we make, it impacts the patient. So
absolutely. And just to end it with you, right? How do you see, you have talked about the debt, how you've translated that to your advantage because you had the data and now you have the analytics, and whatever you used to do with partners is also kind of in-house plus partner. But how have you sort of, I asked this question to a lot of GCC leaders of relatability. In the personal finance space, unless you understand that the Indian investor is very different compared to a UK investor and the way he thinks. So how do you bring that relatability, and what capabilities are you investing in to make sure? I hear about people setting up experience centers, virtual experience centers, persona-based insights, right? Some of the retailers are doing that because it's difficult to understand how a buyer thinks and then you build your product. So how are you trying to do that, from a Lloyds in the personal finance, or if you want to share some other example as well?
Yeah, overall, I think, like I said, I think we had to move in a fast-paced manner, right? In 2 years, I've seen like a strategic shift in the way we added our value proposition, right? Like from infrastructure to integration to intelligence, and now we're already talking about interlocked value, which is where Kiran mentioned, that only comes when you bring the subject matter expertise and then the business roles into the company as opposed to simply the tech role. So we do not want to just ship the code and tech products, but we really want to own the customer impact and customer journeys from here. So I think bringing that product role and operations roles into the mix is one of the first thing. And then also, and this innovation is not just AI centric, right? I think later in the afternoon you'll hear from our CTO Ravi on digital assets. Like very recently we finished UK's first digital transaction to kind of use tokenized customer deposits to buy UK gilts. So this is like going from digital money to programmable money using blockchain and these kind of architecture. So I think the future is bright, and we'll embark on that journey.
No, absolutely. Thank you so much to all of you. I think 2 or 3 key messages, especially for people in the room and for us as UnearthInsight, is that it's no longer an independent story. It's embedded. It's a little more persona-centric. It's a little more product and end-to-end ownership-driven impact that you're trying to create out of your digital innovation and AI teams. And it's also, we couldn't touch upon that question, but I'm sure, based on the work that we are doing with some of you, it also includes a lot more open innovation framework where, some of you in the room and the work that we do with NASSCOM COE as well are also, invited to actually be a part of this transformation journey. That's the objective of curating this, is to make sure you hear, what kind of stories and what kind of solutions are they building internally, so that some of you could also collaborate with them, part of the journey, right? We couldn't talk about the startup and the academia, but the GCCs here in the room are doing a lot of global impact stories where a lot of Indian and global startups have also partnered with them to create an impact. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
I would request you to please kindly stay on the stage. I would request Naman to please come and felicitate our leaders. I would like to thank each one of you for such insightful points that you have kept here regarding the GCCs. Please. Can we please have a round of applause for each one of them? Let's have a quick group picture as well.